government commiserates with people of Katsina State over attack on 2 villages.
African Development Bank partners with Nigeria to establish special agro-processing zones.
Tertiary institutions that violate admission policy to be sanctioned.
I therefore urge all institutions to pay and play according to the rules by conducting all the admission processes only through CAPS.
On Good Morning Nigeria today, we shall continue our conversation on the proposed amendment to the Constitution.
The proposed fifth alteration of the 1999 Constitution has begun at the National Assembly with the setting up and subsequent inauguration of 56-member committee headed by the Deputy Senate President Ovie Omo Agege.
That's right, Juma. Now, the House of Representatives is also expected to set up its own committee to commence the process for the amendment, just like the Red Chamber has done.
Exactly, Kinsley. Yesterday, Good Morning Nigeria assembled some guests on the proposed constitutional amendment, and they all agree that the Nigerian Constitution is an organic document that is subject to review in line with the emerging realities of the country and the society. In the last few years, certain developments have occurred which need to be included in the Constitution for good governance.
Now, apart from those suggestions, the guests also mentioned issues which ought to have been inserted during the last constitutional amendment, but could not scale through due to either misinformation or the lack of consideration for what was proposed at the time.
Now, these issues include autonomy of local governments, separating office of the Attorney General from that of Commissioner, Minister for Justice, independent candidature, revenue allocation, devolution of powers, and creation of states.
Well, these are not the only areas that are yearning for amendment as advocated by our guests yesterday. Now, others include the expansion of correctional services by moving it away from the exclusive legislative list to the concurrent list, state police, education, welfare of the citizens, and indeed other matters that are pending.
In fact, there are many valid issues that require amendment in view of the agitations of the people to enhance good governance in the country.
So, in continuation of our conversation on the proposed amendment of the Constitution, which will be the fifth if it scales through, we have also today having another set of guests to give us their own perspectives on the subject matter. It's on that note I'd like to welcome you to this edition of Good Morning Nigeria, reaching you on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority. My name is Kingsley Osadolo.
And I am Juma Yusuf. Welcome you to today's edition of the program. As usual, we have our companion segments, which include newspaper review, business and orders in the course of the program. But first, let's take the highlights of the morning news with Usman Aliu. Good morning, Usman.
And good morning, Juma and Kingsley. Here is the news highlight. Emir of Katsina Abdulmumin Kabir Usman has called on the federal government to intensify effort towards addressing security challenges in the country. The Emir made the plea when a federal government delegation led by the Chief of Staff to the President, Abba Kyari, visited the Emir in his palace to commiserate with him over the killings by armed bandits at Sangwa and Dankar villages in Batsari local government area of the state. Still talking security, the Nigerian Air Force says it has carried out another successful air raid in its ongoing air interdiction campaign dubbed Operation Rattlesnake 3 at Kirta Wulgo in Borno State. In a statement by NAF Director Public Relations and Information, Air Commodore Ibikule Daramola says the Air Task Force of Operation Lafia Dole destroyed an Islamic State of West Africa province, ISWAP, training camp at Kirta Wulgo on the fringes of Lake Chad in the northern part of Borno State. This followed credible intelligence reports and surveillance missions which established that some structures within the settlement were being used by the terrorists to house and train their fighters. Consequently, the ATF dispatched an enhanced force package of attack aircraft to engage the identified locations within the settlement. The fighter jets took turns attacking the target area in successive passes, taking out the training facilities. The Northeast Development Commission has reached out to 4,000 victims of Auno Village Sunday night insurgency attack on the community and travelers. This followed the assessment visit by Minister of Humanitarian Affairs Sadia Umar Farouk and the NEDC to Auno in Konduga local government area of Borno State.
We discovered that there is a need for humanitarian assistance. This is why I brought this quantity of food items so that we will have some stabilizing effect on what has happened.
The federal government says it is committed towards ensuring that special agro-processing zones are established in the country as proposed by the African Development Bank. This is coming as the African Development Bank set aside $300 million for the project.
You need such collaboration between the agricultural sector and the industrial sector so that you can move the economy forward, you can create employment opportunities.
In the meantime, the House Committee on Environment has resolved to oversight the organic cleanup project with a view to ascertain the level of adherence to the conditions of the United Nations Environment Programme and that of the federal government. The committee chairman, Johnson Ekwade Oguma, at a meeting with officials of the Federal Ministry of Environment and other stakeholders, expressed the commitment of the legislature to achieve the target of the project.
Running of the system is between the Governing Council and the BOT for implementation, and it is clearly, the steps and processes are clearly defined in the Gazette.
We have 21 contractors on ground doing remediation work.
We will go there, monitor what is being done, and then ensure that the cleanup is done to all practical purposes.
And to education now, tertiary institutions in Nigeria that admit candidates not through the central admission processing system will be sanctioned. Minister of Education Adamu stated this at the headquarters of the Joint Admissions and Matriculation Board in Abuja.
To pay and play according to the rules by conducting all the admission processes only through CAPS.
And the NTA has been informed of a fake Facebook account, NTA Nigeria News, operated by one Solomon Adeolu Adekunle, posting unpleasant items and views purportedly by the NTA. The general public is hereby alerted that this is not NTA verified Facebook account and should be discountenanced by the numerous followers of NTA on social media platforms. NTA does not and has never operated with the name NTA Nigeria News. The public is enjoined to be aware of these scammers and who may be using the account to dupe unsuspecting users. Facebook has been notified of the fake account. Please be cautious. This disclaimer is signed by NTA management. And that's the news highlight this morning. We will rejoin Jummai and Kinsley for the continuation of Good Morning Nigeria. That will be after the break.
20 years of travel and counting. 20 years of promoting tourism in Africa and diaspora. Over 3 million kilometers traveled. Over 30 African countries visited. Explored the diaspora in 4 continents. Connected over 100,000 happy tourists to Africa. Reached over 50 million homes. Igniting smiles across Africa and beyond. As Goge Africa turns 20, we thank you and invite you to join us in the quest for 20 must-visit destinations in partnerships with the largest TV network in Africa, the NTA, Ministry of Information and Culture, Ministry of Transportation, Studio 24, Delta Airline, Toll Brokers International. You too can still be a partner. Call the numbers on your screen or info@gogeafrica.tv. Goge Africa, celebrating 2 decades of heritage, travel and tourism.
City Halls. Let's go, guys.
Babe.
Yeah?
Would you please turn on your hotspot?
Okay, there you go. My lady. Play this ball. Hey, hold this guy down.
Password, please.
0808. a message.
From who?
Do maybe. Read it out now. Read it out to my ears.
Free your mind with Airtel Smart Talk and enjoy calls to all networks at a flat rate of 11 kobo per second. Dial *315# to join.
Fine girl. Can I have your phone, man?
Airtel, the smartphone network.
Not so fast. Look, I'm tired. I want to check out of this country for greener pastures. Just calm down for a moment. Please sit down. Do you have a job where you're going to? No, but someone is arranging, Listen, Alinko. Checking out of this country without proper planning means one thing. Unimaginable begin. You know, I've been in the diaspora, but legitimately doing great things at home and abroad. As I've been saying, without the proper footing abroad, the risk is not worth it. Listen, Alinko, it's better to be home than be trapped abroad, or even end up in prison.
My name is Yemi Adetunji, the COO downstream of NNPC. Ever since the closure of the borders, we have seen a marked reduction, about 10%, in terms of the evacuation of what you call loadouts of PMS, which equates to about 6 million liters per day, essentially because of the border closure, because of certain aspects we've also done as NNPC, working with our sister organizations, sister agencies, Nigerian Customs, DPR, Federal Ministry of Petroleum Resources, and other agencies, and also what we call Operation White, which is an intervention we have put in place to trace and track every molecule of petroleum products as they arrive in country through the vessels, as they move through the depots, and as they are evacuated with trucks out of the depots.
Newcastle United travel to London for the second week in a row as they take on Crystal Palace in the league. Will they achieve the double over their host this season, or will Crystal Palace carry out their revenge? Find out as Crystal Palace hosts Newcastle United on the Premier League Live on NTA Network at 3:30 p.m. this Saturday. The Premier League Live is brought to you by Coca-Cola and Access Bank.
Thanks for joining us. Acquisition of skills in special areas drive advancement in entrepreneurship and development. Professionals say the absence of skill acquisition promotes quackery and the discharge of professional duties. Details with Kolo Mohammed on Business News.
Good morning and welcome. It's good to have you along. It certainly helps to have strong technology skills for expertise in a key area beyond graduation from tertiary institutions to drive sustainable advancement in entrepreneurship.
Skill acquisition is the central idea of entrepreneurship. Skill development and equally redevelopment of those skills. Like you see, the tech world is taking over the greater chunk of the global economy simply because the infusion of skill is the #1 priority in value addition.
The first day of trading for the week on the floor of the Nigerian Stock Exchange returned negative sentiment. Let's now let you see where market indices were placed for Monday. My name is Kolo Mohammed. Good Morning Nigeria continues right after now.
Many thanks, Kolo Mohammed, for the business package. Newspaper review is next.
And we have some papers here in the studio. And we'll begin with the Nation. Just above the masthead, we see families petition IG over Nital land with rider FCIID investigators bias. You find that story on page 43. 2.5 billion fraud. Magu begs UK to extradite Desani. You find that story on page 8. Bello to heads of agencies, don't inflate contract. That story is on page 42. And just below the masthead, we see Nigeria faces drug shortage due to coronavirus. NAFDAC warns. IMF urges CBN to end forex intervention. Backs Finance Act 2020. And the picture story there, you see Kaduna State Governor Nasir El-Rufai Middle being assisted to cut his 60th birthday cake. From left, Wazir Zawzo, representative of the Emir of Zawzo, Finance Minister Mrs. Zainab Ahmed, Emir Sanusi, Senate President Ahmed Lawan, El-Rufai's wives, Ummi, Asi and Hadiza, Environment Minister Mohammed Mahmoud, Deputy Governor Dr. Hadiza Balarabe, Oni of Ife Oba Enita Ogunwusi, and representatives of Dangote Group Mansour Ahmed in Kaduna. That was yesterday. And illiteracy in North, threat to peace, says Emir Sanusi. With rider Masari education panacea to banditry. Lawan, 14 million out-of-school children dangerous for the country. And at the bottom plate of the Nation newspaper, Ganduje okay's 60 million for NECO. That story is on page 42. Gunmen kill 4 soldiers, 2 civilians. You find that story on page 43. Kesley?
Okay, we'll take a look at the Leadership newspaper. The Leadership ICT sector grows by 3 trillion naira on stock exchange. The Kogi governor warns NDAs against contract fraud. That's on page 11. Lead story says coronavirus, that's a kicker. NAFDAC raises the alarm over drug insecurity and says Nigeria imports 70% of medicines from China, India, and others. That's on page 4. Anxiety, as Supreme Court decides on Imo and Zamfara appeals today, and court stops INEC's deregistration of political parties. Then below the photograph on the front page, CNN journalist Farid Zakaria blasts Trump over visa ban on Nigeria. It is on page 13. IGR, critical to government funding, federal government tells states, that's page 21. Twin brothers remanded over kidnapping in Osun. And President Buhari sent relief materials to our no community. That's on page 12 in greater detail. Bayo.
Good morning.
Welcome, Bayo.
Good morning, Nigeria. Well, let's start with some of the developments that happened yesterday. One of them is the critical issue at the Senate on the health insurance. The Senate has advocated for a mandatory health insurance scheme. This is an act that is proposed to repeal the 2004 National Health Insurance Scheme, and in this place establish what they call National Health Insurance Commission. The arguments for it is the chairman of the committee, Ibrahim Oloriegbe, says that uncertainty and disease or illness makes insurance very, very necessary, and therefore there is need for everybody, especially the haves, to proffer an insurance for the have-nots, just as the rich should support the sick in his quest. He lamented that statistics show that Nigeria has about 13% of under 5 deaths, as well as 14% of maternal deaths, and the situation has to be addressed. To reduce the trend, health reform has become necessary and mandatory. Health insurance is a good policy, but however, as it is operated now, those who subscribe to the current health insurance scheme have become third-class patients in hospitals. When you go there, because you are under the health insurance scheme, you have a separate area you go to. Yeah. And when it comes to treatment, even drug prescription, there are limitations about drugs that can be prescribed for health insurance patients. Exactly. And that is not good enough. There is an instance that a mother took a baby to the hospital was diagnosed of malaria on admission. They kept on giving the child drugs. For 4 days, there was no improvement until the mother cried out. And the nurse told her in confidence, "Madam, unless they change this drug because you are under NHIS, it might take a long time." And lo and behold, when the mother volunteered to pay for the drugs, they changed the drugs, and within 2 days, the child was okay and was discharged. So, health insurance, the way it is being run now, needs serious looking into.
What I can't seem to understand on the health insurance scheme is they take money out of our salary. And at times you spend 5-6 years without even going to the hospital to see a doctor, and that money is accumulating. So why should you go to the hospital and you get substandard drugs instead of the good drugs that are supposed to make you better? It beats me, actually.
The essence of insurance is that you have a collective payment.
Yes.
And it's a pool. But not everybody is going to be sick at the same time.
Yeah.
So the few that are sick take the benefit of drawing for the pool for the care.
That's quite serious.
The other issue that also was at the Senate was the issue about the law on sexual harassment. That became also very contentious. The Academic Staff Union of Nigeria Universities has said that we should be very careful not to use the issue of sexual harassment to embarrass and harass lecturers, the owners of innovation and intellectual education. The president, Professor Ogubi, was saying that the universities has their own system whereby they have their own means of occasioning disciplinary measures when such occurs, and therefore we should be very careful about extraneous means of imposing law, because it will be very discriminatory and undermining the integrity of the university and lecturers. In the same vein, a professor of the Lagos State University, head of the Department of Communication, says that we must be very careful about sexual harassment. He said, immature, consensual, and disciplinary relationship among lecturers and students cannot be closed. We cannot close our eyes to such. He says that especially that if they found interest in each other, he says dating is different from marks for grades. And therefore, as a Professor Rotimi Olatuyi said, don't get me wrong, I am married, I am happily married, and I do not engage in harassing students. However, I don't believe that it is not proper for lecturers sometimes find interest in students, and students sometimes find interest in lecturers. And it is a relationship which sometimes can be allowed to grow. He cited instances whereby lecturers have married students, or students have married lecturers. But he still emphasized that it should not be seen as an anathema, and therefore we should be very careful how we tackle that.
I don't know. I think some of these arguments are just, unfortunate. I mean, I listened to part of the presentation by the president, the national president of ASU. We have had calls on Good Morning Nigeria to also focus on sexual harassment. And let's face it, what you were just talking about now, in terms of, a student falling in love with her lecturer, or a lecturer falling in love with a student, that's understandable. We're talking about harassment, which is a conscious, focused attempt that is dependent on quid pro quo. That if you do this, you will get this. If you don't do this, you will not get this. It's simple. I mean, and the instances are many. I mean, some of the convictions that we have seen recently, those were not fictional tales. No, and it's only in recent times that a number of girls who were harassed, are still being harassed, are finding the courage to speak out and say, this is what happened. I mean, we have some instances of otherwise depraved lecturers who would even request the student to go and book a hotel room, buy drinks, and so on and so forth, and then offer money. On top of that, they sleep with the student, and sometimes they fail the student. I mean, that's the student's business anyway. Why would you do that? Resist the lecturer. And they claim that, universities have their own internal system. Those internal systems never worked.
They never do.
Because, some of those who were supposed to have instituted the disciplinary measures tended to cover up
their colleagues.
Cover up, for their colleagues. So there's nothing wrong with getting... The fact that you are a university doesn't mean that you are not subject to the laws of the land.
Yes.
And even there, the National Association of Nigerian Students described sexual harassment in universities and equated with coronavirus. Women groups were also there, and they were very, very vociferous in asserting that, yes, the integrity of female students and even male students who are harassed must be protected. And one cannot quickly forget, at the University of Ife, University of Lagos, Ahmadu Bello University, University of Abuja, there have been instances of sexual harassment just in 2019.
That's right. That's true. That's admire. I mean, what is this claim now of exclusivity? IPPIS, you say no, that you will generate your own internal system. Now, sexual harassment, say no, we will have our own internal.
Will they have their own courts to try this?
I don't know. I don't know.
Yes,
it's curious.
I mean,
you can say, for instance, that, okay, the armed forces, for example, they have their own act, but the members of the armed forces are still subject to the laws of the land.
Yes.
Actually, the intendment of the law, as proposed by the member who proposed it, says that it wants to hold the authorities in universities accountable within a time limit for which, when they have cases of sexual harassment, it has to be taken on. However, I think there is a need to add that even after the University Disciplinary Committee has concluded its decision on sexual harassment, if the lecturer is found guilty, like happened in the University of Ife, he should be handed over and be prosecuted.
Not just sacked.
Just sacked and then
no question about that. No question about that. I mean, unless you are not a woman, or unless you don't have a daughter, and actually just speaking as if it's become the norm. It's become the norm. This is part of what has also affected the image of Nigerian tertiary institutions. You know, sex for grace. What does that mean? You know, and what they call sorting or something that I don't know. These are the kind of things that you hear of, and then you ask yourself, you know, why should this continue to persist? It's the level of impunity that you find in the ivory tower that is replicated in the larger society, or vice versa. Yes.
Sad, actually.
Yeah, but let's take the editorial, and it's coming from the Daily Trust newspaper. Regulate the use of siren. The Inspector General of Police has ordered state police commands nationwide to impound all vehicles illegally using the SPY number plates, sirens, revolving lights, or covered number plates. Now, the editorial adds in part that lip service has continued to be paid by lawmakers and law enforcement agencies to the need for regulating the use of siren. The recent order on the use of siren given by the Inspector General of Police was issued by nearly all of his predecessors. The orders have never been enforced. To sanitize Nigerian roads, we call on lawmakers to reintroduce the bill on the use of siren and ensure that all legislative actions, including assent by the President, are followed to the logical conclusion.
Well, the Police High Command severally have come and made announcements about those who are entitled to use sirens. And for the benefit of that, they have listed them to include the President, the Vice President, ministers, and service chiefs. And they have limited them to that level. However, you find persons, even security agencies, fit siren on their vehicle, and the moment they are caught up in any unease on the highway, they put on their siren just to harass road users. And the only way out, therefore, is for the police to enforce it. Enforcing it becomes very necessary. Recently, the Corps Marshal of the Federal Road Safety Commission harped on this, and he also added, pilot drivers, convoy drivers, speed so much so on the highway. Sometimes they harass road users, and this is also very untoward. And it is one of the issues that has been raised. But the crux of the matter is that a law becomes a paper tiger if it is not implemented. So the police and the Federal Road Safety Commission must be up and doing to impound such vehicles and bring them to book whenever they violate
vehicles
the issues of siren
and speed limits. Are not owned by ordinary Nigerians.
There are instances whereby siren using top government officials have knocked down persons and not even bothered to wait.
Exactly.
In not waiting, sometimes I just want to also draw it, because this is part of what was touched on the editorial. The so-called pilot vehicles, and they're usually these 4x4 pickup trucks that they are used. They have no number plates. All that they have is they just write pilot on it.
So how do you arrest them?
Yeah, how do you? No, I mean, assuming they knock down somebody and they drive away, how do you identify the vehicle? If a vehicle has no number plate or has no plate number, rather plate number, how do you identify that particular instance? And it ought to be so simple to enforce. I mean, there are only exceptional cases where you have the crest, that is in place of the number plates that every vehicle is supposed to have. So everywhere you go in Abuja, you will find pilot in front, pilot at the back. You go to Lagos, pilot in front, pilot at the back. So how do we deal with this? And then just the sheer noise from the siren. I mean, it has to be noise pollution in the environment in the first instance. Elsewhere, when you hear the siren, you know that it's an emergency.
Yes.
It's an emergency.
Maybe a fire.
Of course, it will be the fire service. It will be the ambulance. And that's it. Yeah. Or the police. If they are on the high-speed chase, to ensure that they arrest a criminal or otherwise prevent some other offense. But here, because we are so used to the siren now, you don't know what is an emergency.
Yes, or not.
And ordinarily, it's an offense for you to impede the movement of a vehicle on emergency duty, and the siren is waiting like a fire truck. If once you hear you pull out of the way, let it go. But here, because everybody is harassed and intimidated, you ask yourself, where are they going? Let them come and move me from here. Especially when there's a traffic break.
Yes.
It's so unfortunate. So bye to you. Thanks a lot for being around.
Thank you too.
Yeah, we'll see you again tomorrow. All right, it's Good Morning Nigeria still on the network service. We'll take a short break now. When we return, we'll be dealing with part 2 of proposed amendments to the Constitution.
Love will be able to unite, irrespective of tribe, religion, and culture. So we keep preaching on love. That is the only binding force. Let us love ourselves, irrespective of where the person comes from.
You are about to witness the commencement of the most stimulating and compelling contest on television. This contest is only for the strong, the intelligent, and the talented. Get ready for the Unity Challenge reality TV show. Coming soon.
Introducing the new and tasty Peak Yogurt, the nourishment to be you, do you, and go for you. Peak Yogurt comes in orange, strawberry, and plain sweetened flavour. All available in nearby stores.
It's like making a step while the world is going forward and the school is making a step backward.
The students, they sit on the floor, no chair for them. Even the classroom is nothing to write home about.
We have only one toilet, and that toilet is not good.
Going to that toilet is an eyesore. 980 people using one toilet.
Newcastle United travel to London for the second week in a row as they take on Crystal Palace in the league. Will they achieve the double over their host this season, or will Crystal Palace carry out their revenge? Find out as Crystal Palace hosts Newcastle United on the Premier League Live on NTA Network at 3:30 p.m. this Saturday. The Premier League Live is brought to you by Coca-Cola and Access Bank.
Welcome back. And to begin part 2 of our topic, let's take some excerpts of yesterday's discussion.
I do not think that we should constitute constitutional amendment to a ritual where every time that there is a new, whether the 8th, 4th, 5th Senate makes it a duty to retool the Constitution with the cost implication that has. Conservatively, a lot of people have put the issue of constitutional amendment to close to over 10 billion naira in the last few years, and whether we have value for money from that is something that we need to interrogate. But as to whether it's important to continue to revisit our laws, but some of the germane issues that face us are the issues that border on the well-being of citizens.
I would think that, yes, constitutions, I mean, indeed, people have said that, Nigeria has a surfeit of constitutional documents. We have to have this. When we are talking, asking the question, you refer back to even what happened before independence. I think constitution making is a dynamic process because the society itself is very dynamic. We should actually be having a review of what constitution we are going to make use of.
The issue of separation of the office of Attorney General and that of Minister of Justice or Attorney General of the state and the Commissioner of Justice. Such office is very sensitive to be allowed to be determined in a political process. It is good to always insulate it from the influence of politicization so that it would operate independently.
The Constitution should not be seen as an impediment to our development. And I believe it should be a duty, a mandatory, in fact, it should be a right for every citizen to be literate, not to be an illiterate. Because today, if you look at the challenges of insecurity that we are facing, most of the victims are illiterate. But they are deploying modern tools that are products of education. So that tells you everybody wants it, but perhaps we have denied many people because we have not put in place processes and measures through either both the constitutional provision and other laws to make it mandatory for people to be educated, at least up to a particular level.
All right, now those were excerpts from our conversation yesterday with our guests on Good Morning Nigeria. Today, one of the guests yesterday is also here with us, Honorable Mohammed Tahir Monguno, who is Chief Whip of the House of Representatives. Honorable Monguno, pleasure to have you back on the program.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Also here with us in the studios is Professor Osarieme Osumbo, Professor of Law, former Governor of Edo State and Senator of the Federal Republic between 1999 and 2007. Prof, pleasure to have you with us on the program.
My pleasure. Good morning.
And also here in the studios, another regular guest on Good Morning Nigeria is Chairman of our location, that's Abuja Municipal Area Council, Honorable Abdullahi Adamu Candido. Pleasure to have you with us.
My pleasure, Nigeria.
On Good Morning Nigeria. Yeah. Okay, so let's begin with Professor Osarieme Osumbo, former governor of Edo State, former senator. And also, I believe you were a member of the El-Rufai Committee on Restructuring. That's the one set up by APC?
That is true.
Oh, okay. And, well, we hear from the Senate that part of the documents that they will be considering in this review exercise will be the 600-odd recommendations from the 2014 National Conference organized by former President Goodluck Jonathan, plus the El-Rufai Committee report on restructuring. But before we get into the nitty-gritty, tell us your perspective. Why do we need to get on with a fifth alteration to the Constitution?
Well, thank you. I think one of the persons who spoke in the background clip did mention the fact that society is dynamic, which means it's always changing. What we had 10 years ago is not what is obtaining now, and it is very appropriate, and in fact the responsibility of the people themselves to begin to revisit the Constitution in the light of current developments. That is why even before the independence, again from the background clip, there were a series of constitutional conferences in London at that time. And since we became independent, we have had a series of constitution amendment exercises. Some people tend to think that this is wasteful, but I don't think it is wasteful. I don't think that we have had too many constitution amendments. The Constitution of the United States of America, for instance, even though has been in existence from about 1876 or thereabout, has been amended 27 times, the last being in 1992. The Constitution of South Africa came into being in 1994, and it has been amended 17 times. So I just cite these two examples in order to allay the worry of those who may be of the opinion that we are having too frequent amendments of the Constitution. It is proper that we revisit our Constitution from time to time and try to look at those provisions that will ensure better quality governance and the happiness of the greatest number of people in the society. The exercise that you refer to, in which I was very much involved, was the APC Committee on True Federalism, which was put in place by the leadership of the party in order to bring about some of the promises made to Nigerians under the APC manifesto and those which government has from time to time committed itself to bringing about. So that was what led to the setting up of that committee, which made very far-reaching recommendation, although we focused on those issues that have to do with quote-unquote true federalism or restructuring. Constitutional amendment goes beyond these issues of restructuring or true federalism, but that exercise was very much limited to those aspects of the Constitution that we believed if we effect constitution amendment in those areas, it will go a long way to assuaging these agitations for restructuring or true federalism. And I'm happy that the National Assembly in this current exercise has undertaken to look at it. The House of Representatives cooperated very much with the committee when we had meetings with the Honorable Speaker at that time and the leadership of the House of Representatives, and they actually sent two people to sit with us. They were members of the committee. Unfortunately, we didn't enjoy the same kind of cooperation from the Senate. But I believe that this time, for obvious reasons, but I believe that this time we will enjoy a lot of cooperation from both the Senate and the House, and we'll be able to...
Professor also says for obvious reasons.
For obvious reasons.
We don't know those obvious. We will pretend not to know those obvious reasons.
We've not heard that, actually. Yes, now we'll now come to the Chief Whip of the House of Representatives, Mohammed Tahir Mongano. Okay, I'll be coming to you now. I'll go to the chairman, yes, of the Abuja Municipal Council. And they said the amendments is not too much. In 20 years, we've had 4 amendments, if I'm correct. They say it's not too much, and it's supposed to look at emerging trends and, you know, things that happen across the country. Is there a ripple effect if these amendments are changed? This is the 4th time. Is there a ripple effect that the people will really feel that there's been an amendment to the Constitution and it comes to them, affects them directly?
Thank you very much. I think my response to this will be from the point of the current trends of happenings in the country generally. In as much as because constitutions has to be reviewed from time to time, we've come a long way now, and I think Nigerians now deserve what is theirs. As far as this amendment of our constitution is concerned, what is it that is so common now that is defined from points of agitations? So let us look at amending the constitution from what will suit us as people first and foremost, without reason to look at the foreign world, how things operate there. We must look at ourselves first and think of what are those things that are challenge to the nation. There is a lot of, suspicion among the citizens. There seems to be lots of fears we don't even trust ourselves. What are those reasons that are making things this way, this time around? So the current trends must be of prominence. We must look at what exactly are issues that has to do with the stability of this nation. Don't forget, most likely before even the independence, right? The population of this country was merely 30 to 50 million. Now we're looking at a country with a population of close to 200 million, if not even more. Now that is to tell you that the elitist nature of the nation has increased. The agitation from all segments of the society is also increasing by the day. And like I said in my opening remarks, we seem to lose confidence in ourselves. There seems to be issues ranging from simply there is no sense of nationalism any longer. And therefore, whatever the constitution that is to be reviewed or amended, we must focus on what are those peculiar issues that has to do with us. What are those reasons that are making people to agitate unnecessarily? And we may assume they are not necessary, but they are too important to be ignored. Sincerely, if we must be true Nigerians, and if we want the stability of this nation, it means that this constitution that is to be amended by the National Assembly, one, we must support the cause. We must pray for even the National Assembly members so that they get focused, and then we must not wave aside all these agitations from the people. For instance, if you look at it, what are the causes behind setting up regional security outfit? They may not have been considered in the past, but what are those things now that are making people to say, let's go for this? A country that is having up to this population of citizens, and yet you are told that Nigerian police who are supposed to police Nigeria are not even up to 400,000. Then if you look at the military, they are not even up to 150,000 or something close to that. You don't think that this policing can be properly done by this few amount of security men that we have on ground. And therefore, reasons behind the agitations could simply be, we are not satisfied with what is operational for now. So I want to believe that because we are people with divergent views and opinions, we are people with different shades of thinking, there is every reason why Nigerians this time around must look at this constitution to be exactly what really disturb the nation as people, so that we can find a way of strengthening our relationship and unity. Because if we ignore this kind of postulations, sincerely we may not be finding it good as we advance in the course of time.
Thank you very much, Honorable Abdullahi Candido, for your opening statement. Honorable Monguno, I want to come to you now, and borrowing from what the two guests said earlier. It talks about agitation, it talks about the concerns of people and why we have to have an organic document. But in terms of process, who are the stakeholders in the constitution amendment effort? We can make all our discussions, you can do all your strivings, you're having your own committee being set up later today, as you indicated to us yesterday. But who are the stakeholders that at the end of the day we would have indeed the wishes expressed by you here and others who are out there reduced into the fifth alteration to the Constitution?
Well, the Constitution of a nation is supposed to be a replica of the wishes and aspirations of a people in any given nation state, that is reduced into an organic document that is subject to change in tandem with both objective and subjective realities at any given point in time. And as such, the Constitution is not supposed to remain static, as rightly observed by the learned professor. It's supposed to always be a replica of the wishes and aspirations of the people. And as such, if the Constitution is supposed to be a document that is to guide the aspirations of the people, then the major stakeholders are the people. The people are the major stakeholders. And the National Assembly, being the representative of the people, and being also under Section 4 of the 1999 Constitution as amended, given the power to legislate for the peace, order, and good governance of the country, is given the power to drive the process of the constitutional amendment to make sure that at the end of the day, it is a reflection of the wishes and aspirations of the people. And in so doing, the National Assembly will consult widely with Nigerians by organizing various public hearings whereby all stakeholders will come and give their own opinion on the various items that are slated for amendment to the Constitution. And beside that, there is also what we call constituent engagements. We'll all retire back to our respective constituencies, directly seek the opinion of our constituents as to the areas that are now demanding alteration of the Constitution to reflect the wishes of the people. We'll engage, we'll do that. Even in the previous exercise, we have done that. So at the end of the day, it is Nigerians that are the stakeholders, but the National Assembly, by virtue of Section 4, is given the power to legislate for the peace, order, and good governance of the country, will drive the process of the constitutional amendment to capture all the issues that are contending for attention, like issues of derivation, whether hydrocarbon and solid minerals should also be part of derivation, issues of independent candidacy, issues of revenue allocation, issues of devolution of power, whether issues concerning labor, police, prison, stamp duties, and what have you, should now be taken to the concurrent legislative list or still be retained in the exclusive legislative list, issues of independent candidacy to bring about a level playing field in our democratic exercise, and what have you. So it is Nigerians that are the stakeholders. The National Assembly is merely going to drive the process.
Okay, I'm still going to stay with you. You know, Honorable Candidate said people with divergent opinions in Nigeria, and the amendment should concentrate on issues that affect the people. You're now going back to your constituency to deliberate with your people. With the issues that these people have been clamoring for, you know, for a long time, will it be taken into consideration?
Yes, all issues that Nigerians are clamoring for will be taken into consideration. It will not only be limited to issues of whether we are going to achieve through federalism or functional federalism, as rightly pointed out by the professor yesterday. Issues, for example, of education, whether education can be removed from the direct fundamental objective and directive principle of state policy and make it a fundamental human right so that it can be justiciable. And all these issues are issues that are contending for attention and is supposed to be a subject of alteration of the Constitution. So at the end of the day, after consulting our constituents, these views will now be articulated and then aggregated into the process of constitutional amendment, so that at the end of the day, the document that is going to emerge will be a replica of the wishes and aspirations of majority of Nigerians. It's not supposed to be the views of all Nigerians, but majority will have their way, but the minority will have their say at the end of the day.
Okay, Honorable Mogono, thanks a lot. I want to come now to Professor Osumbo and also Candido. I want to stay with the issue of stakeholders and process. Because what we have seen in terms of attempts at amending the Constitution, the fourth alteration earlier fell through in 2015 because, accent, couldn't be gotten. But here we are, some earlier attempts to, for example, get local government autonomy failed because we couldn't muster 2/3 of the states of the Federation. That is to say, state houses of assembly. We also have a situation clearly recognized that state houses of assembly, with the greatest respect to them, virtually have no mind of their own because they are under the control of state governors. And some persons have also argued that a political party should have a stake, have an interest to drive amendments to the Constitution. That's why I talked about stakeholders and process. At what stage, therefore, in your opinion, should these stakeholders be canvassed to begin to take an interest in the issues that might, of course, then be reduced into the alteration? Once the National Assembly has done its own, the House and the Senate, they pass, they transmit to the State House of Assembly. At that stage, is beyond them. When would you think, therefore, it's advisable to begin to canvass these other stakeholders so that if there is, any amendment that is worthwhile, in the larger interest of all, there's no possibility of failure?
Well, first, let me say that every Nigerian is a stakeholder. Everybody who has a view to express, because the Constitution belongs to all of us, so we are all stakeholders. And that includes other segments like political parties, organized civil society, and so forth and so on. I was quite impressed during the APC exercise the other time, especially our outing in Bauchi State. You had so many people, even members of the National Youth Service Corps made presentations. Association of handicapped people, all segments of society showed a lot of keen interest in the process of amending the Constitution, which is good, which again illustrates the point I have made that we are all stakeholders. However, we are operating a democracy which relies on a system of representation. The electorates in Nigeria elected people at the National Assembly to represent them, the Senate and the House of Reps, and at the state houses of assembly. And Section 9 of the Constitution, which really deals with the process of altering, they say it's alteration, but the more common expression is amendment of the Constitution. Section 9 puts the responsibility for this in the hands of the National Assembly and the House of Assembly of the states, acting on behalf of the people that they are representing. Sometimes certain ideas may be good, but the time may not be ripe for those ideas. The Honorable Chairman cited one instance, the issue of state police. Very many people, including myself, at a time was averse to the idea of state police for a number of reasons, particularly the ability of states to pay and so forth and so on. But in the light of current realities, I think there are very few people now that would really be opposing state police, because we've seen that relying exclusively on a federal police has not helped us, and things seem to be getting worse. And if we are really to practice federalism as it is, the major issue is that the houses of assembly, many crimes, whether it is stealing or whatever, forgery, they are state offenses. So if a house of assembly of a state has created an offense, passed a law, shouldn't they have police to help enforce the law passed by the House of Assembly of the state? It's very elementary principle of a federal system of governance, and other countries that operate this system have it. So just to mention that is one whose an idea whose time has come. And I would be surprised if that still does not scale through this current amendment process. I do hope it does. Although there are checks, a number of checks that have to be put in place, but those are matters of detail. Talking about I just mentioned the stakeholders that Section 9 of the Constitution recognizes. Ideally, the president shouldn't be involved in the process of amendment of the Constitution. Because the United States, from where we borrow, the president is not involved. The Constitution mentions the threshold that you need to achieve. Each of the houses of assembly, 2/3 of the members, the total members. And then the houses of assembly, 24 out of 36, that is 2/3 of the state. Once the 24th state House of Assembly has adopted any proposal, is supposed to come into effect. It does, but the Nigerian courts, I think up to the Court of Appeal, have said that the president must assent. And that is the practice which we now have, that the president assents to it. But ideally, that shouldn't be the case. One recent example that we can relate to, even though it's not constitutional, is the African Continental Free Trade Area. Yes. Once the 22nd country assented to it and ratified, automatically it came into existence. You don't require any other process. That is how the process of constitutional amendment ought to. But I can understand some of the reasoning why maybe the judiciary may feel, let us not leave this to the legislators alone. There must be some other check to avoid excesses on the part of the legislature. But I'm just telling you now the various stakeholders. Then, as to whether the houses of assembly are able to align themselves with this process as envisaged in the Constitution, you've mentioned the major constraint is that whereas the legislators at the National Assembly have and exercise much influence and oversight on the executive, they are more independent, more assertive. The reverse is the case with state houses of assembly, that they are very much dependent on the executive. Even when there was a proposal to strengthen them, they chickened out. But I believe that we've overcome that difficulty and that hurdle.
So again, if I might come, how would that affect governance?
Well, the legislature, as I just mentioned, has two important powers. The power of the purse, that is to decide on the budget, how much and where would the executive spend the money, for what purposes. For them to be able to carry out oversight on this, they have to be independent, they have to be bold. They don't have to be looking at the body language of the governor, whether he will take offense and ensure that the leadership of the House of Assembly is changed within 24 hours. That has been the case. Or whether he will starve them of funds. That has been the case. But I believe that in the last constitutional amendment exercise, the Houses of Assembly now have been able to get their allocations on a first-line charge. So the other difficulties and weaknesses of the Houses of Assembly, in my view, will be overcome with time. As I just said, an idea whose time has come, nothing can stop it.
All right, Prof, thanks a lot. Honorable Candido, let's get your own candid view on this with regard, to what will get the National Assembly, the relative independence, sometimes fiercely expressed, is virtually taken for granted now. But once they are through with their work and the bill goes to the State House of Assembly, that's where the challenges will occur. What in your opinion should be done to obviate this or to ameliorate the level of interference or lethargy that might arise at the subnational level?
For obvious reasons, I think most of my views will be too elementary and very local.
Local government chairman.
Yeah. You know, we are talking about governance and we are talking about people. The State Assembly, the National Assembly are all representatives of these people. You are talking about sampling views. Already, issues is already in the air. People knows of the disturbing trends all over. You don't even need to even ask, what are your issues in this country? You already know that you are feeling it. And therefore, this is to suggest that the beauty of democracy lies 80% in the National Assembly, because democracy is all about people, for the people, and by the people. And the national, that is why I so much respect the People's Assembly, because that is where the fulcrum of democracy lies. That is where the issue that concerns people are debated, considered, and even get done. And therefore, if Nigerians have made a suggestion, and this is what they want, it is only fair that the National Assembly with the State Assembly see that as a reason for them not to even expect much, bureaucracy between them and whoever has put them there. Whoever may have put them there through proxy, but of course allowing people to have voted for them, that shouldn't be any reason again for them to stand on the wishes and aspirations of the people. So I feel it is very, very important that even at the State Assembly, where we assume the fares almost lie, right? Because somebody is somewhere who is their godfather or their godmother, whatever it is. This, they must put it behind them now, because we are talking about the future of this country. We are talking of what are we going to bequeath to the future generation coming behind us? What are we going to ensure that we douse tensions now as it is? Because whether we agree or we don't agree, the situation in this country must no longer be pretended. We have issues at hand, and the destiny of this country lies squarely in our hands. And we must do everything possible, wherever you are serving, whatever you are in the society, play your role, so that we'll be out of this situation. Because if we don't get things right, like I keep saying, sincerely, I'm afraid of this country in the near future. Because this is my own kind of thinking. It's a personal opinion, okay? But I felt it's better for everybody to do his job. And now that we have people who are conscious enough of what we have in this country, facing us squarely, I think it is very important that they do the needful. They must do everything possible to take Nigerians, to put away fears and suspicions among us, because that is our problem.
Okay, thank you so much, Honorable Candidate. We'll be taking a break now. If you're just joining us, this is Good Morning Nigeria, and we'll be discussing proposed constitutional amendment. We'll be right back. Don't go away.
My name is Giato Adeza Adams, the General Manager, Corporate and Strategic Communications, Nigerian Port Authority. As regards the land borders closure, available statistical data from APMT, which is one of our terminal operators that is involved in container handling terminal, has recorded an increase of 200 TEUs of cargoes into their terminal as a result of cargo diversion from the vessels originally meant for neighboring countries. That shows you that the terminal operators is going to have an increase in revenue, which is accrued to the terminal, and at the same time, Nigerian Port Authority will equally benefit from the revenue increase. So that is the benefit we have derived from the border closure.
You people sell imported materials here. As beautiful as the shop is.
Auntie, buying foreign goods does not help our economy. Neither does it boost local production. And the good thing is Nigerian-made products are high quality. Really? And to make Nigeria great again, that is why I only sell made in Nigeria products. Because change begins with me.
I'm convinced. Change begins with me too. Change begins with me.
This message is brought to you by the National Orientation Agency in conjunction with the Federal Ministry of Information and Culture.
Newcastle United travel to London for the second week in a row as they take on Crystal Palace in the league. Will they achieve the double over their host this season, or will Crystal Palace carry out their revenge? Find out as Crystal Palace hosts Newcastle United on the Premier League Live on NTA Network at 3:30 p.m. this Saturday. The Premier League Live is brought to you by Coca-Cola and Access Bank.
You're welcome back, and just joining us in the studio is Right Honorable Dave Yoemba, former Speaker, Benue State House of Assembly. You're welcome to Good Morning Nigeria.
Thank you.
As a member of House of Assembly, and experts have said that the House of Assembly is not in total control of what they do. They are under the, puppeteering of the governor. And what is your take on the proposed, constitutional amendment by the National Assembly? How would the state assemblies act on it?
First and foremost, I would debunk the assertion that the state governors are in total control of members of the State House of Assembly. In as much as I appreciate that the autonomy will be the fulcrum of whatever the State Houses of Assembly are going to do. There's a saying that he who blows the power detects also this book. And once the financial autonomy is granted to the State Houses of Assembly, they are completely independent. The autonomy is the fulcrum of whatever operations of the House of Assembly is. And in a situation where the State House of Assembly is going cash in hand, they are going cap in hand, soliciting for funds for whatever that they are going to do, being it public hearing or whatever that they are going to do. They are soliciting for funds from the state governors. They will certainly dictate what happens in the State Houses of Assembly. And so, the autonomy must come. And it is only when they are in total control of their finances that they will also be in a position to do whatever that they want.
I think the background to the question that my colleague asked, because he just joined us, is what the other guests have been discussing in terms of process. We'll come back again to substantive issues of which provisions to amend, but for the amendment to be successful, the proposed amendment to be successful, we have to have 2/3 concurrence of the states of the Federation. And in a previous amendment exercise, the State Houses of Assembly had voted against their own autonomy. And that's the point. If you are saying that is it's a sine qua non, for the independence of state legislatures, but we had seen in this country where the amendment could not fly because state lawmakers said no, we don't want autonomy, and the presumption, of course, was that there was a big boss, behind those things. So, in the current exercise, what, in your opinion, is required to canvass stakeholders in the state legislature and state governors to be on the same page on some of the critical aspects that will come up for amendment?
Yeah, as I said earlier on, at most points in time, members of the State Houses of Assembly have voted against their own autonomy. And as you said, there are issues coming out from various State Houses of Assembly in such a manner that state governors will invite speakers and tell them, vote against this provision, vote against this provision, and vote in favor of this provision. And it becomes an issue that you can imagine somebody is giving you, there's an obvious leave that is being extended to you, and you now say, no, you don't want it. You have been enslaved. And here is a situation where somebody is unleashing you. So I have released you from slavery. And yet you say, look, I want to still be in bondage. So you begin to wonder, what is the problem? What is it? And so as soon as provisions for voting comes to various state houses of assembly, you will discover that members themselves vote against the autonomy of the assembly. And so some things play under. I begin to think, and in such cases where some various state governors were members of the state legislature, and were members of the National Assembly. Coming back, they have enjoyed the autonomy at the national. And when they become state executives, they begin to detect they don't want it. For fear of what? For fear of the independence of the state houses of assembly, where they can now say, look, we want this, we want this. There are oversight functions, they are being cowed, public hearings, they are being detected when to do, when to conduct, and when not to conduct. And so it's a big problem. And I think that the various state houses of assembly must rise up to the challenge and vote according to their conscience and not being detected on which provisions to alter in the Constitution in the forthcoming amendments. And I think that once that is done, they will be completely ostrated from whatever the state executives are doing to them.
Okay, thank you. We'll now come to Honorable Ma'am. Let's talk about the beauty of democracy, which Candido described, that lies in the National Assembly. You come from a place where it's ravaged by war, and most of your people are either at home or in the metropolis. How would you be able to bring these people together, and what is the thinking of the National Assembly on true federalism and restructuring that people have been clamoring for some time?
Well, for now, I wouldn't say the thinking of National Assembly. Maybe I will only express my own
thinking,
my own personal opinion on the various issues that are contending for attention. Then on the floor of the House, I will canvass my opinion and then lobby on behalf of my constituents, other members of the House of Representatives, to agree in tandem with my own opinion. At best, that is what I can do. And then when it is time for voting, vote according to the wishes and aspirations of my constituents. So whatever view that I'm going to express here is going to be for now my own personal view, but not the view of the National Assembly. Well, with regard to the issues of federalism or functional federalism, it's a question of nomenclature. One, with regard to devolution of power, I'm of the opinion that the issues that are not supposed to be on the exclusive legislative list that must now be transferred to the concurrent legislative list. For example, police, as rightly canvassed, one of the major problems we are having in this country that metamorphosed into the security problem that we are having now, that is threatening our territorial integrity, is the issue of the fact that Nigeria were under-policed. And there is now the need for us to have state police by transferring issues concerning police to the concurrent legislative list. Then we are thinking about, if we are to achieve true federalism, there is a need to also transfer issues concerning stamp duties to the concurrent list so that state can also generate enough funds. Issues concerning generation of electricity, railways, all these issues should go to the concurrent public holidays should go to the concurrent legislative, because right now I know a lot of state governments declare public holidays during celebration of New Year by the federal government, Islamic New Year, but the federal government doesn't do so. All these issues are issues that are supposed to be in the concurrent legislative, including, for instance, then when it comes to derivation, I think hydropower should also be subject of derivation. Then when it comes to resource control, I am of the opinion that minerals, solid minerals, mining and what have you should be in the concurrent legislative list. And then the issue of onshore-offshore dichotomy should be clearly determined in the Constitution to avoid all these controversies. regarding offshore, onshore dichotomy. Then when it comes to the judiciary, there is a need for us to have state judicial councils that will superintend over issues concerning judiciary at the state level for the purpose of creating courts of first instance and affiliate courts that are going to adjudicate on matters to which the state houses of assembly can make laws on. Then issues of independent candidacy. I'm of the opinion that we should have independent candidacy in view of the fact that our political parties seems not to have enough space for true democratic culture, so that at the end of the day, there will be transparency and fair play and level playing field for all people to clinch the ticket of a particular party. That's why you see people protest, go and contest under another political party and still win elections. So there is need for independent candidacy. Then also the issue of separating the office of the Attorney General of the Federation or of the state from Commissioner, Minister of Justice and the Commissioner of Justice of the state, as the case may be, to insulate that office from political influence because of the sensitivity of the nature of the functions of the office of entering nolle prosecute, discontinuing criminal proceedings at any state before final judgment is given. So these are some of the issues that I think will attract my attention during the course of the constitutional amendment. Then issues of making education justiciable, removing it from the fundamental objective and directive principle of state policy, and then transferring it to fundamental human rights, so that at the end of the day, education, at least basic literacy and numeracy, should be right of every Nigerian.
All right, Honorable Mongono, thank you very much. Professor Osumbo, what would you like to see amended?
Well, Honorable Mongono has touched on very many of the items that the Committee on True Federalism recommended. Particularly devolution. People have been talking of devolution. He mentioned many of the items. Some others that he didn't mention, but which are important, are food, drugs, food, drugs, narcotic and psychotropic substances are under the exclusive legislative list. And many state governments, particularly in the northern parts of the country, have been worried about the scourge of youth taking tramadol and all those kind of things, and they don't have any power under the Constitution as it is now to legislate and control the use and consumption of this. So that can go into the concurrent food and drugs, but not psychotropic substances or narcotics. Those ones can still remain federal, but medications that people abuse can now go to the concurrent list. That is one. Another is fingerprints. For instance, we're talking about law and order. The states should be able to have their fingerprint data bank. The issue of registration of business names, which is basic. It's not incorporation. Incorporation can remain at the federal level, but registration of business names, which now is under the exclusive legislative list, can be moved to concurrent, except where the entity is going to be engaging in interstate, across-state operations, in which case it will have to be registered as a national federal under the federal body. But if its operation is localized to a state, there's no reason why a state should not be able to legislate on registration of business names within the state. It's just some of the important issues. The argument, like prisons, for instance, again, the analogy that somebody violates a state offense, is convicted, prosecuted, convicted, and jailed. But he's sent to federal jail, federal prison, or correctional center now. He's sent to a federal correctional center. Why shouldn't he be? Because He violated, he breached a state offense, so he should go to a state correctional center. But as of now, that doesn't happen because only the federal government operates prisons. So these are some of the things. Derivation is one. A very important subject which we looked at is this agitation. Well, we have 36 states now, and many people are of the view that many states on their own can really not do much in terms of being able to lift themselves by their bootstraps to be economically strong. But they could be stronger if there's a block. They operate as a block. We have states that have, is it Don, D-A-W, they have the south states have their, is it Braced, or yes. Whatever is pronounced. And therefore, we felt that, okay, if there's agitation that a group of states would want to collaborate together, harness their resources together in order that they can do things like railway, which the Honorable said can be devolved, then it should be possible for the Constitution to permit that to happen. That is, a group of states, through their legislators, can decide to collapse themselves into not region as a unit of as a tier of government, but as a grouping of states or region of states for whatever reason, provided there is an important proviso that it doesn't threaten the sovereignty and territorial integrity of Nigeria. Where that happens, then it will be in violation of the Constitution and it will be null and void. So these were some of the recommendations. Even the independent candidacy is subject to certain requirements. For instance, you must not have been a member of a political party 6 months before that time, the election. So it's not a question of losing at the primaries and then you say you will stand as an independent candidate. And then you still need to be nominated. Your form has to be signed by persons who also do not belong to, who are also independent like you. So these are some of the checks to ensure that independent candidacy is not abused. For me, now, particularly with what is happening now, I would want the National Assembly to revisit a provision which they put in the Electoral Act of 2010, which is that when an election tribunal nullifies the election, an election on the basis of malpractice, irregularity, or whatever, they cannot now proceed to declare the second-placed person or any other person as winner of the election. Is there section, is it 140 of the Electoral Act? So to avoid abuses which happened in the past, the National Assembly put that a tribunal cannot say, okay, the election was marred by malpractice and still go on to say the second-placed person won the election. It is wrong. But the courts have invalidated that provision, that it violates an encroachment and violation of the powers of courts under Section 6 of the Constitution. Section 6, subsection 6 of the Constitution gives the judiciary the power to exercise all inherent powers and sanctions of a court of law. Which means if you are now, as a National Assembly, trying to check the extent to which the judiciary can go, then the judiciary, they are also very envious of their own power, and they will do whatever is necessary to retain their power. So, but if it is, that provision is put in the Constitution, then the courts will have no option but to obey it. So that if an election is marred by malpractice, rather than declare number 2 as winner, let them go for another election.
Okay, apart from that, what is your committee recommendation on revenue sharing?
Well, revenue sharing, we agreed that it should be revisited, revenue sharing between the tiers of government, but it requires some complex understanding. You need experts to be able to come up to the proper ratio. So we advocated that the proper body, Revenue Mobilization, Allocation and Fiscal Commission, and all that, should look into the matter. But in principle, we believe that it should be revisited, particularly in the light of devolution. Once you devolve, that is transfer powers from the federal to states, then necessarily you must also devolve the resources to the states to be able to perform these new functions. And that will entail revisiting the revenue sharing formula.
Okay. We have quite a number of tweets that came in. We'll take the tweets, then we'll continue with the conversation. Nura Buba Konkol tweets, "Good morning, Nigeria. Constitution amendment is good and the matter came at the right time. But we don't have any increase of tenure or single tenure to elected officials."
Now, Meriga tweet says the Constitution doesn't need any amendment, but rather Nigerians running the affairs of the country need serious amendment.
Oladimeji Morofo tweets, "True federalism can solve the issue."
Now, but Amasi Adamu, it says FCT should be recognized as a state of the federation with all the benefits for democratization of governance.
And Celestine Okeokonko tweets, "It's long overdue for our National Assembly to do the needful so as to overhaul some obsolete laws."
Ogo, honestly, Nigeria needs to review her constitution for the peace and harmony of her citizens.
Naboga Namdi tweets, "The proposed amendment should compel political parties to conduct direct primaries to produce flag bearers. The current indirect delegate system doesn't produce the best. Once we begin to install our best people as leaders, our problems would have been half solved."
Mike Ayankwo, the imperative of amendment to the Constitution cannot be overemphasized. A lot has to be factored in tinkering with the Constitution. We must look at local government autonomy, state police, independence of the legislature at all levels.
And Stainless Geoffrey tweets, "Any constitutional amendment without inserting referendum section and clauses referendum in the Constitution will douse tension and diffuse consistent threat for succession. It will make for peaceful parting instead of remaining parties for unity."
Chris Simeon, amendment of the Constitution should not impose hardship on the common man. Everyone must receive equal treatment as stipulated in the Constitution when it's amended.
Yes, and Dekule Olayemi tweets, "We need to amend the Constitution if we want the rule of law to be vibrant because the Nigerian Constitution is very weak. Most of our elites are so powerful that the law of the land, which shouldn't be, and to make Nigeria work again, we need to go back to regional government."
Now, Onwadiobu Dubem tweets, "It's necessary to amend the Constitution and also remove every interest in religion. Let everyone be equal in justice."
And coming from Basharu, "Arguably, the problem of Nigeria may not necessarily be structural or institutional, but behavioral. It's not a lack of enough rules and procedures, but largely of non-compliance to the provision of the Constitution by those delegated with the authority."
Dele Jack Solomon, "The foundation of our Constitution rests on its ability to enable us strengthen our unity, deepen our democracy, engender good governance, and enable the enforcement and protection of our rights. Now, we must always consider these."
Ibrahim Modu Aji tweets, let there be citizens' participation in the proposed amendment, incorporate some part of the 2014 National Confab and also some parts of a Rufai report on restructuring. The proposed constitutional amendment is indeed coming at the right time."
Jones Ferrari tweets, "The security architecture needs amendment. Soldiers and other security forces must be given powers to shoot to kill terrorists, bandits, and kidnappers. Arresting and detaining them is worsening our problems. The judiciary is not helping matters."
And Sani Michael Omokoji tweets, "Those who are against constitutional review amendment are doing so out of ignorance. Our laws are obsolete and primitive to handle some cases. For example, the issue of cyber crimes. So many other germane issues are alien to our laws, and this has to be corrected through constitutional amendment."
All right, so those are the twists that we can take. In the meantime, let's return now to our guests. Honorable Candido, Chairman AMAC, that's Abuja Municipal Area Council. It's a widespread view, almost consecrated now, that part of the challenge that our democracy has faced since 1999 is the ineffectualness of the local government administration system. Virtually, every commentator says it, and the evidence also abounds from what we see. What would you like to see in the amendment of the Constitution that will enhance the local government system as was otherwise envisaged?
I think it would be very unfair on my part if I close from this session without even talking about local government autonomy, because as it is now, I have the privilege of representing, I believe, the entire local councils here in this panel. So it's very imperative that the new constitution to be amended or to be altered must have to consider the autonomy of local governments in this country. For simple reasons. Government is all about people, and the people are more at the local councils. I have said it here on so many occasions that even if you are the president of this country, you must have a local government. You must have come from our community and the ward and the local government. 90% of the people our National Assemblies members are representing are also from these local councils. And we keep talking about, decay in infrastructure, no roads, no potable, good drinking water, no electricity in the local council. There are certain things that, of course, the federal government don't have any business to do with local council. But, of course, because the local governments are so created, then they must be allowed to perform. And so, in this regard, I want to believe that once the National Assembly this time around, okay, are fair enough to local councils by giving them this full autonomy. Of course, that does not suggest that there won't be supervision. There must have to be supervision by certain, factors put in place at the state structure of governance. But the local autonomy is very, very important. This must be done so that it will attract lots of responsibilities for the council leaders. And then it will, of course, stop the influx of people. These are urban, rural and urban migration. Because so long as you have all things going for you at the local council, there wouldn't have any reason for you to go up there, because it is because they are absent. That is why you see people, moving to the cities. So I want to appeal to the National Assembly. In fact, this time around, we just have to beg them. We must be on our knees to beg Nigerian citizens and the National Assembly this time around, because they are representing us, to be fair enough to the local council, to the people of this country, so that this local government autonomy is achieved once and for all. There are other issues. The state, like the former speaker has just pointed out, the state assembly also need this autonomy, because they are also, tailored around, local councils, and then the people around, the people that were administering from the top here, they are all centered around the local council. So we need this autonomy so that they can have every reason to say, yes, we are elected by the people, and here we are delivering services. So I want to really ask for this autonomy. This assembly should please, in the name of God, do everything possible to ensure that local government's autonomy is achieved. Two, I want to appeal once again. You see, I don't want to be talking about theory about all issues, but we have issues at hand, and I keep repeating it, and we must look at it very well. I come from an area, like somebody just tweeted now, that FCT should be whatever you are talking. We have all tribal groups, all agitations all over the country. These are issues that I want the National Assembly to seriously look at them. They must not be waved aside. They are too important to be waved aside. If, for instance, I, from FCT, you have joined me now, Abuja is for all. But we need every semblance of authority as in government. It is only the Abuja person, for instance, that is being administered through a ministry. And it's a federation. It's not supposed to be. So the National Assembly must be fair enough to the people, because they are also people. The same thing is applicable. If Honorable Monguno, with due respect, sir, says we can have, what do you call this, independent candidacy. What stop, if only it can give us peace in this country, what stop us even inserting in the constitution rotational presidency, rotational governorship, and what have you, so that everybody will feel a sense of belonging in his own place. If I am a minority from somewhere, I may not even have any reason to even say I want to become governor, because it will never be rotated to me. Because of the numerical strength of the majority, I won't have any way.
I want to become president of this country. How do I become? I'm from a poorly inclined society. I can never be recognized because I don't belong to the hegemony. So these are things that this National Assembly this summer must do everything possible to bring down this tension. Is too much. We must use this opportunity once and for all. I know that, of course, we keep amending the Constitution, but now is an opportunity to start the right thing, even as we are going to amend it maybe in the next 10 years or 20 years to come. But let us use this opportunity very wisely. I want to suggest that.
Okay, thank you so much. I'll now come to Honorable. You know, you've heard everything that has been said now, and how would this amendment, you know, be done to ensure that autonomy of local governments and the, you know, the abolition of the joint account, will it in any way change the narrative in the local governments?
Certainly, yes. It will. We'll begin by the amendment of certain provisions of the Constitution. We'll look at Section 121, the Consolidated Revenue Fund of the state. If you look at the amendment in Section 121, it is only 121, 3A, 3B, and there's no C. The C should be the insertion of local government in the Constitution. If you look at the Consolidated Revenue, as the amendment it tells now, they have amended Section 121 to take care of the House of Assembly, to take care of the judiciary, and what about the local government? So that's the starting point. It has to be inserted. But as I said earlier on, I do not know what the governors, the chief executives of various states stand to gain by denying the local government autonomy. You have your own money coming to you directly. Why wouldn't you allow the local government to exercise powers over their own funds? To me, the joint account must be abolished completely so that this money comes directly to the local government. Let them administer their funds, do whatever they think their people need. As the chairman said, Amak said, there are peculiarities. What a certain local government needs may not be the need of another local government. So they draw their budget in such a manner that they can be able to touch the lives of their people. And so it has to start with the amendment from the various states. The state, you know, as I said, the Houses of Assembly will have to vote. And if they vote against it, there's no way it can pass. Other states, they need to tell of the states so that that provision can pass. And so you begin to see horse trading between the various state executives and the members of the House of Assembly, in as much as possible, inducing them not to vote for local government autonomy. So I begin to wonder, what do you stand to gain? And so to me, let the National Assembly take over completely. Like you can see, it is even in the concurrent legislative list, the administration of local governments in the country. States can make laws for good governance of the various local governments, and the National Assembly too. So if you look at the first schedule of it, it is under the concurrent legislative list, and so the two can begin to work. So remove it completely from the concurrent list to exclusive legislative list, so that as Section 81 of the Constitution applies, Section 121 will also apply to the various states. Section 81 has given us Section 81 subsection 3, A, B, C, and then 3. It goes on like that. And so if you amend Section 121 to also accommodate the funds, disbursement of consolidated funds from the various states to the local government, that would serve a useful purpose. So to me, as I said, we have to look at these issues again and again so that it can give us much needed results in the administration of local government administration in the country.
All right, Honorable Yoemba, thank you very much. Honorable Mogono, let's have your own thoughts on this. I mean, you didn't tick off local government reforms as one of your major items, to focus on in terms of amendment. But this is important. On the basis of the proposition by Honorable Yoemba and Honorable Candido to say, do this to local governments, they will plead with the National Assembly. But we have also had radical proposals in the past. The idea of federalism presupposes a binary arrangement, that the federating units will be the federal and the states, so that delete every aspect relating to local governments from the constitution, let it be the business of states. So, we've had a state like Lagos, for example, create its own local council development areas or whatever it is called. That all this arrangement of the federal government now seeking to dictate to the state governments how it should relate to local governments, and the question of joint local government account doesn't arise. So you have federal, you have state governments. State governments make arrangements as to how your local administration will be created and how they will function.
Well, I think this argument is being proposed and canvassed against the backdrop of the fact that if issues of devolution of power, issues of resource control gains currency in the present constitutional amendment exercise, then the issue of completely removing local governments from the constitution and then leaving the affairs to the states will now hold water, because it is inherently contradictory for you to canvass resource control, which presupposes that states will now control resources within their jurisdiction and only pay taxes and royalties to the federal government. Then you are also canvassing revenue allocation, the alteration of the revenue allocation formula to now favor states. You are talking about derivation to include hydro power supply and what have you. So, and for you to also again canvass that local governments should be autonomous is inherently contradictory. So if at the end of the day the constitutional amendment exercise is concluded in such a way that these issues are the ones that has seen the light of the day, then there is no way we can now say local government should be autonomous. But if on the other way, all these issues of resource control, devolution of powers and what have you, did not pass in this exercise, then the issue of local government autonomy should see the light of the day, so that local government should be autonomous, being the tier of government that is closer to the people, should be able to control their resources for the purpose of dispensing or bringing dividends of democracy to the doorsteps of the rural people, and then lessening the burden of federal government now going to construct rural roads, primary health care centers, and what have you, which ordinarily should be within the purview of the local governments, will be a thing of the past.
All right, thanks. Professor Osumbo, let's get your thoughts on this, but from a slightly different perspective. Namely, the view was also canvassed yesterday. We've had the experience again since 1999 when state governments have been mandate to conduct local government elections, where the party in power clears all the seats 110%. The least that they will get will be 99.999%, which makes, according to the view, virtually irrelevant the locus of the State Independent Electoral Commission. So there's been a canvass of the view that let INEC also go and start conducting local government elections. And yet, at the same time, there is a canvass of true federalism. So how do you reconcile all these apparently conflicting propositions? Have local governments get them reformed, or let states just deal with local governments since they're already dealing with them anyway? Let it just be their business, and then don't get INEC involved in the conduct of those elections. What are your thoughts?
Yes, thank you. As implied in your remarks and as Honorable Mongono quite clearly stated, there are contradictions in some of these agitations. Because if you are talking about local government autonomy, then meaning that federal government should relate directly to the local governments, councils, then it means that you are removing the powers at the state level. But federalism implies that at that tier of government, it should be determined by the legislature at the state level. So we have to reach a decision on this. And the position that my committee on True Federalism took is to say that states should be completely responsible for local governments. We should face the reality. I know there are problems, reasons why in the first place it was felt that if you leave it completely to the states, the local government tier of administration will not work. People at the state level will not allow it to work. But it is recognized that there is an important place and function of local government administration for the overall good governance of Nigeria. So what should we do? We have a situation now where states conduct elections into through their CX into the council, but the funding is coming from the national level, the federal level. Why don't you then just leave everything to the state to fund, to create, and to decide the number? Because there have been issues too in this country when states decide to play with the number of local government areas or councils that they have. And they are required under the Constitution as it stands now to seek approval or endorsement by the National Assembly. And the argument is what concerns the National Assembly with how a state decides to structure its local government system of administration. So the contradictions are there, but my leaning on this is that, well, it is the people that elected the governor and members of the state houses of assembly. We must take responsibility for those who we elect. We cannot continue to depend on a paternalistic federal government to put things right. The people who elect and put people in power at the state level, the subnational level, should take responsibility to ensure that those they elect do the right thing.
Thank you so much.
And there will be competition. Maybe some may not be in tune at the beginning, but once some other states are doing it right, sooner or later, the states that are laggard will pick up their game.
Thank you so much. And on that note, we thank Professor Sereme Osumbo, former governor of Edo State and senator between 1999 and 2007. Thank you so much for honoring our invitation.
Thank you.
We equally thank Right Honorable Yohemba, former Speaker, Benue State House of Assembly. Thank you so much for coming on Good Morning Nigeria. Honorable Abdullahi Adamu Kandido, Chairman, Abuja Municipal Area Council. Thank you as usual.
Good morning.
And Honorable Mohammed Tahir Mongono, Chief Whip, House of Representatives. As always, a pleasure to have you join us.
Thank you very much.
Sports Update is next.